Hello, internets. It is Kat, and I am here to bring you the next installment of Igraine the Brave. Last time we left off with the stone lions above the gate roaring. Let's continue and find out who it is. An unexpected visitor. The lions were roaring as hoarsely as if they had dust in their throats. Startled, Igraine wiped the water out of her eyes, ran back up the steps to the battlements, and pushed the leather man out of her way. Sisyphus stood on the wall, hissing. Igraine quickly knelt beside him and peered down. The stone lions crouched on their ledge, teeth bared. Their tails were lashing the wall, and at the sound of their roars the startled water snakes put their heads out of the moat. A horseman was galloping toward the castle from the east. "What do you think you're doing?" Igraine shouted angrily at the lions. "That's no stranger, you silly stone faces. It's Bertram, master of horse at Darkrock Castle." "So it is," growled the lion on the left, narrowing his eyes. "She's right." "It's those doves," the lion on the right defended himself. "How can we keep a proper lookout with bird droppings in our eyes? Pretty soon I won't be able to tell a horse from a unicorn." "Yes, and the droppings stink to high heaven, too," growled the lion on the left. "Doves have no respect these days." But Igraine wasn't listening anymore. She ran down the steps with her mail shirt clinking and raced across the courtyard. Sisyphus followed her at his leisure. "Who's coming, my dear?" Sir Lamorak called from the tower window. "Oh, just a false alarm from the lions again," Igraine called back. "It's Bertram, master of horse from Darkrock." "Oh, no," groaned her father. "That can only mean one thing. The Baroness wants to hold one of her boring horse race meetings. Tell her we can't come, my angel, all right?" Then he disappeared again, before Igraine could remind him that she personally didn't think horse races were in the least boring. Bertram, the master of horse, rode into the castle at a gallop. His face was as red as her parents' magic cloaks, and his horse was snorting and sweating. Igraine quickly fetched a bucket of water and rubbed the horse down with a handful of straw, while its exhausted master slipped out of the saddle. "What weather!" panted Bertram. "I'd sooner have torrents of rain. Where's your father, Igraine?" "Casting spells to make my birthday present," said Igraine, stroking the horse's mane back from its forehead. "And you'd better not disturb him. Is the Baroness going to hold some horse races?" Bertram shook his head. "No," he said. "I'm afraid the news I bring is nothing like that. Call your parents, Igraine, even if it does mean that your birthday present has to wait." End of chapter. Bad news. "What is it, Bertram?" asked the fair Melisande as she and Sir Lamorak entered the great hall. Of course, Albert had come with them, even though Igraine had sent Sisyphus to tell him that he, at least, was to continue working on her present. His hair was covered with silvery powder, and Igraine's parents didn't look much tidier, but all the same the master of horse bowed deeply to the fair Melisande. "Distressing news, your loveliness," he said. Igraine's father raised his eyebrows. "Oh, no, don't say the old Baroness has—" No. Bertram looked all around as if the paintings on the walls might hear him. "No, she's all right, but a few days ago she had an unwelcome visit from her nephew Osmund, the one who turned out so badly. Osmund the Greedy, everyone calls him, and he came with his castellan, who never opens his visor except to eat." "Oh, a knight?" Igraine was sitting on the long table where her great-grandfather Peleus had carved his initials. "What sort of armor does he wear?" "It has spikes all over it, from his helmet to the greaves on his legs," said Bertram. "A nasty piece of work, just like the man inside it. Yesterday morning," he went on, lowering his voice, "just when I was getting the horses fed, Osmund suddenly announces at the crack of dawn that the Baroness has gone on pilgrimage and won't be back for a year at the earliest. And guess what? He claims she's left him in charge of Darkrock and all her lands while she's away." "The Baroness on pilgrimage?" Sir Lamorak frowned. "But she never leaves her room except to see that her horses are all right." "Or to drink spicy mead," said Igraine. "Exactly," Bertram nodded.
No one saw her leave, and she didn't go to the stables either. Do you think she'd have gone away without saying goodbye to her favorite horse, Lancelot? Ask your daughter. She's visited the Baroness often enough."
Igraine wiped some dub droppings off her mail shirt. "Impossible," she said. "The Baroness never even went to bed without visiting Lancelot first. And she poured a little spicy mead in his water before breakfast every morning, even though I kept telling her that spicy mead would do him no good at all." Albert frowned, which he could do quite impressively, and Igraine's parents exchanged anxious glances. "That certainly does sound peculiar, Bertram," said Melisande. "What do you suggest we should do? Shall we go back to Darkrock with you? Shall we ask this Osmund to tell us exactly where his aunt went?"
But Darkrock's Master of Horse firmly shook his head. "No, no, your loveliness. I haven't come to ask you for help. I'm here to warn you. I think Osmund is a threat to your castle and your family."
"A threat to us? How?" asked Albert, removing a mouse from his hair.
"It's my belief—"
Bertram looked around him again as if fearing he'd be overheard.
"It's my belief this man Osmund came to Darkrock only to mount an attack on Pimpernel."
"Indeed?" Sir Lamorak raised his eyebrows.
Well, well, I expect you have some reason for that suspicion." "He wants your books of magic, sir. His servants talk of nothing else. He's planning to use your books to make himself the greatest magician in the world. And I assure you, when Osmund wants something, he takes it. Not for nothing is he known as Osmund the Greedy."
"Yes, I think I've heard a few stories about him and his castellan with the spiky armor," murmured Sir Lamorak. "Not very nice stories. But his aunt the Baroness is such a charming old lady, even if she does like spicy meat a little too much."
"Osmund is stirring up feeling against you, sir," Bertram went on. "He's spreading word that you don't deserve to own such powerful books if all you do with them is make trees blossom in winter and conjure up magical presents for your children."
"Ah, I see," murmured Sir Lamorak. A little silver powder fell on his shoes as he ran his fingers through his hair.
"Osmund's castellan is offering the villagers bags full of gold to tell him about the defenses of your castle," said Bertram. "And that spiky brute puts his sword to the throats of those who don't take his gold and keep their mouths shut. He wants to know everything, whether the stone lions can do anything apart from roaring, how dangerous the snakes in the castle moat are, and whether the gargoyles can really devour arrows and spit fire."
Bertram looked at Sir Lamorak with concern.
"The people of the village like you, sir. You're kind and generous, and you've helped almost all of them at some time or other. But Osmund's castellan knows how to frighten them."
"Those poor people!" said Melisande angrily. "Bertram, next time you're in the village, would you be good enough to tell everyone they're welcome to pass on all they know to that castellan? What can he discover that's so important anyway? And if this man Osmund really does attack us, then Lamorak and I will have to think up a few nice little magic surprises for him, won't we, my love?"
"Definitely," said Sir Lamorak. "He will attack, your loveliness," said Bertram, his voice husky with concern. "More soldiers are coming to Darkrock every day. Heaven knows where Osmund finds them all. They're streaming into the castle from all points of the compass, and his spiky castellan is bringing in horses, arms, and armor. As you know, the Baroness stored nothing but her barrels of mead in the prison tower, but Osmund is having the place fitted out as a dungeon again, and I'm afraid you're meant to be his next guests in it."
Bertram shook his head.
"Yes, I fear he's going to come calling at Pimpernel Castle very soon, and it won't be a friendly visit."
"Ah, well," Sir Lamorak sighed, and his eyes wandered over the portraits of his ancestors. "Pimpernel has had unwelcome visitors many times before, and all of them wanted the books of magic, but the books are still here. No, I'm not worried. The Baroness's disappearance is a far worse headache. As soon as Igraine's birthday is over, I'll ride to Darkrock and find out whether our old friend has really gone on pilgrimage. But thank you very much for telling us all this, Bertram. Will you stay for dinner? Good heavens, I don't believe we've even had breakfast yet."
"Thank you very much, sir," said Bertram,
bowing to Igraine's parents, and then to her and Albert.
"But I must get back before anyone notices my absence. Do be careful, and please take my warning seriously."
Then he turned and walked to the door with a heavy tread. "Wait a minute, Bertram!" cried Igraine, following him into the courtyard.
Pull the drawbridge up the moment I've left, Igraine, Bertram told her. Bar the gates and keep well away from Dark Rock while Osmund is lording it there. No fencing practice with the servants, no secret rides on Lancelot. And I'm afraid you and I won't be able to meet for some time.
Igraine didn't answer. She looked out of the gateway into the east, to the place where the strange banner flew from the towers of Darkrock Castle. "Don't you think it might be useful for someone to spy on that Osmund?" she asked. "I mean, he wouldn't know who I am."
"Don't you dare!" Bertram picked up his reins. "I will personally throw you into the moat if I catch you at Dark Rock. And I'll never take you to a tournament like I promised. I've told you all there is to know about Dark Rock at the moment, so enjoy your birthday and pray for Osmund to die of indigestion before he can stretch his greedy fingers out to Pimpernel. Oh yes," he added, putting his hand into his saddlebag and bringing out a beautiful bridle. "And this is for your pony, a little present from me and the grooms, so that you'll remember us when you're a famous knight. I know it's supposed to be unlucky to give presents before someone's birthday, but who knows when we'll see each other again."
"Oh, thank you, Bertram," gasped Igraine, stroking the soft leather.
"See you sometime,"
called the master of horse as he rode over the bridge and away, back to Dark Rock. End of chapter. That is killer on my throat. Oh my gosh. I'll be back in a minute. I need to go get some water. Okay. A little magic mistake. By that evening, everyone at Pimpernel had forgotten about Bertram's bad news. Igraine's parents were still casting spells, but now rainbow-colored smoke was drifting out of the tower window, which always meant that they'd nearly finished. When dusk fell, Igraine couldn't stand it anymore. Once again, she climbed the stairs to the tower, but just as she was standing at its heavy oak door, the visor of her helmet snapped shut, and Albert chased her right through the castle and into her room. Then he cast a spell to lock the door and set off back to the magic workshop, whistling. Of course, Igraine tried climbing out the window the minute he'd gone, but as soon as she put a foot on the windowsill, 6 fat, bright green spiders started spinning a web in front of her nose. Albert knew very well what scared his little sister. So Igraine could only wait for her birthday to come. At last, when the moon was shining in the sky above the castle tower, she took off her mail shirt and lay down on the bed. Sisyphus snuggled up beside her and soon began snoring with his head on her stomach. He snored almost like a human being. But Igraine lay awake listening to the strange songs that the night wind blew over from the tower, wondering about her present. Then she remembered Bertram's anxious face. She tried to imagine what Osmund looked like, and his castellan, too, the knight with the iron spikes all over his armor. But she didn't make a very good job of it. Perhaps adventure has finally come to Pimpernel, she thought, but she wasn't so sure that she still liked the idea. Sisyphus woke with a start when she turned over restlessly and hissed at her. Would the Baroness really go on pilgrimage without saying goodbye to Lancelot? She wondered. Then she finally fell asleep. It was the middle of the night when she was woken by someone hammering on her door. In alarm, she sat up and saw Albert standing in the doorway with a lantern in his hand. "What's up?" she asked sleepily, pushing Sisyphus off her legs. Albert cleared his throat in embarrassment and brushed pink icing out of his untidy hair. Well, it's like this," he stammered, clearing his throat again. "We've had a little magic mistake, a slip of the tongue. These things happen sometimes, you see." Igraine jumped out of bed and went to the window, but the castle courtyard lay quiet and peaceful in the moonlight, and the tower wasn't leaning any further sideways than usual. "What kind of mistake?" she asked, turning suspiciously to Albert. "Has my birthday present gone up in rainbow-colored smoke?" "Oh, no, nothing like that," Albert made haste to reply. "Your present is ready. It looks wonderful, only... He ran his hands through his hair again. "Only, just as we were going to add the finishing touch, Mother made a slip of the tongue, and it happened." "What?" cried Igraine. "What happened?" "You'll see in a moment." Without another word, Albert took her hand and led her through the dark castle, over the moonlit courtyard, across the narrow bridge, and up the staircase to the tower until they stood in front of the workshop door. Downcast, Albert pushed it open. The books of magic were running around in great agitation, waving their arms and muttering to themselves. And among the jars full of leaves, powdered flowers, and ground minerals stood 2 pigs, one pink and one black. "Hello, honey," said the black pig in the fair Melisandre's beautiful voice.
"We're in a bit of a fix, what?" said the pink pig in Sir Lamorak's unmistakable voice.
Igraine gasped for air, opened her eyes so wide they almost popped out of her head, and found that she couldn't utter a sound.
"Luckily we'd as good as finished your present. There was just one little detail to be added," said her father, or rather the pig with her father's voice. "Oh, do please keep still, books." The books of magic, their feelings injured, sat down on the carpet.
"There it is, honey," said the black pig, trotting over to a huge parcel lying on Sir Lamorak's magic armchair. "Albert stopped to wrap it up before he went to wake you. Would you like to open it now or wait till after breakfast?"
Igraine looked first at the huge parcel and then at her bristly, curly-tailed mother.
"I think I'd rather open it when you've changed yourselves back again," she said. The books of magic broke into mocking laughter.
Well, my dear,"
grunted Sir Lamorak, scratching his snout rather clumsily with one back trotter.
"There's a tiny little problem there. I'm afraid we found out that the jar of Giant's red hairs is empty."
"Completely empty," said the fair Melisande, sighing. "So what does that mean?" asked Igraine uneasily. She could never remember just what all the magic ingredients were for. "We told Albert that jar was empty 2 months ago," complained a fat book with a gilded cover. "But he's so careless, he'll never get to be a good magician that way." The other books nudged each other and nodded, sneering.
"Yes, all right, I know. I ought to have gone to find more at once."
Albert gave the books a nasty glare.
"But giant's hairs don't exactly grow beside every castle moat, do they?"
"So what exactly does all of this mean?" cried Igraine impatiently.
Her brother cleared his throat. "Without the giant's hairs," he said, "our parents will stay pigs."
"No doubt about it," croaked the smallest book. "Nothing to be done. All over. Finished."
"What?" cried Igraine, horrified. "Are you saying I have a couple of pigs for parents from now on?"
"It's not all that unpleasant being a pig, honey," said Melisande, who still had beautiful blue eyes. "So if you don't mind very much—"
"Well, not very much," murmured Igraine, looking down at her parents. Suddenly she just had to smile.
"You do look funny," she said. "Especially you, Papa, but pink suits you."
"How kind," said Sir Lamorak shyly, rubbing his nose against a chair leg.
"Couldn't I find some giant's hairs somewhere?" asked Igraine. "Where did you get them from before?"
"Oh, there are several giants in these parts," replied her father, "but it would mean a long ride for you, and these are wild and dangerous times."
"Who cares?"
Igraine shrugged her shoulders.
"I've often found you magic ingredients before. I like doing it." "Let's discuss it later," said the fair Melisande. "I think we all need some sleep now. You too, books. Off you go, back on the shelves."
Grumbling, the books of magic scrambled up and climbed the narrow ladders to their bookshelves, where they leaned against each other, closed their eyes, and were all snoring fit to bust in a moment. Casting spells is strenuous work, even for books of magic.
"What do you think, Lamorak?" whispered Melisande. "Would we be more comfortable in the stables or downstairs in front of the hearth?"
"I prefer the stables," replied Sir Lamorak quietly, and yawned, which looks rather odd in a pig.
So Albert and Igraine took their parents to the stables, made them a comfortable bed of clean straw, and then left them alone, with the horses, who looked disapproving when they saw their new companions, and foolish when the pigs began talking in their owners' voices. End of chapter. So things are starting to get interesting. And I promise it only gets better from here. Except Bertram's voice. My throat does not like doing Bertram's voice. So, bye. See you in the next installment or next video or whatever I decide to do.